Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books. Today I have another book review for you, this time for the finale of The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, which is The Return of the King. Now, obviously, this is the third entry in The Lord of the Rings, the finale, and I've been rereading this series and really enjoying it. I first read these books about 2 years ago, a little bit more than that, but about 2 years ago, and I figured I'd reread them because it's been a while and I wanted to see how they hold up now that I've read a bunch of other books. Like the other two books in the trilogy, I really enjoyed this one. Maybe my least favorite of the trilogy, possibly. But it's still a very, very good book for sure. So first we'll talk some positives. First things first, I think generally this book is quite similar to The Two Towers in the sense that part one of the book, which is book 5, because, all these books are split into two of their own books. So you have books 1 and 2 in Fellowship, books 3 and 4 in Two Towers, and then books 5 and 6 in this one. In both Two Towers and Return of the King, I think that the first part, which was book 3 in Two Towers and book 5 in Return of the King, was my favorite part of each book. This part focused in this book mainly on the majority of the Fellowship, Gandalf and Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas, and Merry and Pippin, all going into Gondor. And I really enjoyed this part of the book. You have all of the Fellowship going to that place. You have them interacting with Denethor and Faramir, which I really enjoy. I really enjoy Denethor in this book. He also was excellently portrayed in the movies, but I really enjoy him in this book as well. And really interesting kind of ideas with him as far as kind of his mental state, the way he's looking at the whole situation. And then you have the Battle of Pelennor Fields, which was great. I would say I prefer the battle at Helm's Deep in the second book, but the battle in this book was also really good. Despite the fact that the action and the battles are pretty few and far between in these books, I think they're all actually done really well, which I think is pretty nice. Great character stuff as well. I would say in this book, my favorite character in this part was Gandalf, who is one of my favorite characters in the series, for sure, as he is with, I'm sure, many other fans. And I really enjoyed him in this book. I really enjoyed his interactions with Denethor. I really enjoyed his interactions with Theoden, and Theoden in this was also good, and Éomer and Éowyn and all of them were great. And I didn't really remember those characters as much in hindsight, but having revisited them again, I actually really enjoyed them. So all that stuff was really great, of course. Very epic feeling, of course, as you might expect with Lord of the Rings. I would say out of the trilogy, I would say either this one or Two Towers to me is the most epic feeling of them. If I were to pick one, it might actually be this one, and definitely gets that feeling across in the first part of the book. As far as part 2, I really enjoyed Sam and Frodo's interaction. Sam and Frodo are just a great pair. And Sam is my favorite Lord of the Rings character. He is my favorite character in this book alongside Gandalf. And I really liked him and Frodo in this book, as well as Gollum, who doesn't appear as much in this book as he does in the previous one, but he was still good in here. And I really liked the end of this book, which I'm not going to go super into, even though, if you're watching this, you're probably familiar with the story of Lord of the Rings, but just on the off chance that you're not, I'm not going to get into spoilers. But after the journey, the majority of the journey has ended, there's this kind of extended epilogue, is what I kind of think of it as, which is like the last third of the book or something like that, which was also one of my favorite parts of the book. I would say either this or part 1 was my favorite part of the book. It's hard to say. But I really liked that. I really liked seeing the aftermath of things, how things kind of resolved, and then also going into things like the Scouring of the Shire, which, even though I personally didn't love reading it, I found it a little dull at sometimes. And speaking of, to get into some of the more negative points, I did think that a lot of part 2 of this book was a little bit less interesting. mainly basically everything prior to the epilogue, as I'm kind of referring to it, was not as great to me, but it was still good. Just was a little slower, a little bit dragged a little bit for me. Even though I didn't absolutely love reading The Scouring of the Shire, because I did think at some points it was not super engaging, I do think it really works thematically as kind of an ending to the story of kind of this bittersweet type of thing that I actually really liked. And just overall, the ending of this book I think was really great, and really enjoyed reading, you know, everything from the end of the journey onwards, basically. And seeing everybody reconnect and everything was really cool. So that's pretty much all I have to say about this book. I feel like I don't have a lot to say about really any of the Lord of the Rings, because I don't have a lot to say that hasn't been said already, and my general opinion can be summed up as it was really good. That's kind of the things that I really wanted to talk about. So as far as the book overall, I really enjoyed it. Again, it's maybe my least favorite of the three. I would say Fellowship and Return of the King are pretty close for me. I would say this one's probably the overall better book, but I think I prefer personally the first book, so it's a little hard to say for me. But it is still a really enjoyable one either way. The second book, in my opinion, is easily my favorite, so I guess there's that. As far as a rating out of 10 that I would give Return of the King, I would give it an 8.5 out of 10, which I believe is the same thing that I gave Fellowship. Still a really great book for sure, well worth reading the whole trilogy. If you're a fantasy fan and you have not read these books, I would highly suggest that you do so, not only because they're great books, but because they are incredibly influential, and I think they are one of the very, very few books that I think every fantasy fan must read. I tend to not be the kind of person that says if you're a fan of something, you have to like, or not even like, but you have to experience this thing. But I think when it comes to fantasy, Lord of the Rings is an absolute must for every fantasy fan. So if you have not read it, then definitely go do so, because it is well worth the read. Even if you don't necessarily like it, I think it is important for understanding the influence that it had on fantasy and all that kind of thing. So that is pretty much it for this video. It's been a lot of fun revisiting these books. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you have enjoyed my thoughts on them and all of that stuff. Let me know in the comments what you think of this book and of the trilogy overall. Is this your least favorite of the trilogy like it is for me, or is it maybe even your favorite of the trilogy? Let me know in the comments. So that is pretty much it for this video. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys next time.